Greetings from Highlights from the Hill.
Welcome to Highlights from the Hill. Our lesson for this coming Sunday, May 17, 2026, is Cultivating Generosity. The print passage come out of Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 14 through 22, and Ephesians chapter 6, verse 5 through 9, and 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 through 19. Our key verse comes out of the NIV. It's recorded in this way. It says, when you are harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Our lesson aims go this way. As a result of experiencing this lesson, you should be able to do the following. Contrast God's justice and impartiality with societal tendencies toward various isms. An example, classism, racism, and ableism, etc., etc. Develop a sense of generosity rooted in God's love. And lastly, respect one another as equals in the sight of God. Our lesson has three outlines, and one is gleaning and generosity. Secondly, the outline says treating people with dignity. And the last outline says how to obtain true riches. The biblical context talks about how this lesson came to pass, and it talks about how that it was in three different parts of the Bible. In Deuteronomy, Moses reminded the people to treat others fairly and with compassion. In Ephesians, Timothy was also stressed to talk about generosity as a key part of Christian living. He goes on to say it was a mark of faith. Generosity is both an attitude and an action, and it takes both. You got to have it to be able to do just that. God commands us to give freely, and because of his love, he shows no favoritism. As we move forward into the lesson, we know that God can work things out directly for us. And if we are on one accord, together, we can make a difference. So with our first outline, gleaning and generosity, it talks about various things here, but I want to give you a definition of gleaning. Gleaning is the act of collecting leftover crops in a field after the harvest, and it's left there for the needy. In this first outline, God commanded kindness, not only to families but to widows, and he wanted orphans and foreigners and even servants to be treated fairly and to build up generosity in such a way that it will be a memory and also full of gratitude. Our lesson also goes to tell us that the farmers was intentionally leaving these items, the grain, the grapes, or the olives, there so the needy could collect it. So, in our second outline, treating people with dignity, we as a people ought to be serving God hard or wholeheartedly. We should be serving him with all we got, all we got. Because our God shows no favoritism. So, with that, we need to know that Paul, in this example, is telling us to serve, but he also wants the masters to serve and treat the servants with fairness and respect. And he also wanted to know because both of them stood under the authority of God, and we are required to do just that. Paul's teaching reminds us that as disciples, we ought to be shaping relationships, even though some things, some unjust systems still are, are born or are carrying on. But here's the thing, our God, who planted all of us, plants a seed right now of equality by affirming his impartiality. So, for believers in this second outline, you must take away that we are challenged to treat every person, whether they are the employer or whether they are the employee or a neighbor, we ought to treat them with honor. And the last outline, how to obtain true riches. Paul recognized wealth, but he wanted us to set a goal to shape people's hearts and priorities. Wealth can disappear. It's not going to be here forever. But our God is faithful. He is faithful. And he wants us to do what is right to benefit others. Through our call of this walk in life, we must be general. We must have the generosity in our hearts to do what he's called us to do. We ought to be moving beyond words. It takes action. It takes attitude. And all of that goes hand in hand. So finally, Paul pointed believers to an eternal perspective that the treasures we have will fade away, but if we store our treasures in heaven, it shall endure. So true wealth is not what we keep, but what is released in love. And all I can say is it's not your born date or your end date, but it's what you do between the dash. Generosity is not a suggestion in Scripture, but it is commanded by God that we have his own character. And when we are able to extend this generosity, we reflect God's love, his generosity to us, and we'll be able to build a legacy that endures beyond this life. God bless you and keep you is my prayer. Get ready for this service this Sunday morning, this lesson, because it's shown up talking about generosity, cultivating generosity. God bless you.